Hello friends, how's your research going? If you're new here, my name is Rafaela. I'm an educational sociologist based in Tokyo. In today's video, I'll be sharing with you my slow productive writing systems that get me going without driving me crazy. First thing first, what I like to do is to set the deadline at least 1 week prior to the actual deadline. The reason why I do this is because we're adults and a lot of things happen in our lives. Like I mentioned in my Instagram, for example, lately I've been sick and I couldn't just write for about 1 week. And that would have absolutely delayed my process. But since I had set it out this deadline and planned accordingly to that new deadline, I was able to finish my paper before the actual deadline. So I strongly recommend you having a deadline that gives you a little more space to work before you start rushing. If you're new to writing, you might not really know exactly how much time you will need to write one whole paper. So what I suggest you doing is to start as soon as possible. And if you have not downloaded my Notion template, I will link it down below. I really like to spend a good amount of time to plan the actual writing and the deadline for each task. For example, I like to break it down to chapters and I write down, for example, I will take about 2 weeks to write the introduction. I will take about 1 week to write the methodology. So based on my prior experiences on writing, I will calculate how much time I will need to work on those tasks. And based on that amount of hours, I will be creating a Gantt chart so that I can keep track on each task. The detailed your plan is, the less time you will spend in the future planning and readjusting all these tasks and the deadlines. I was quite surprised that a lot of people, they mentioned that they feel very much distracted and lacking motivation to start writing. And when you have this kind of good planning and deadline, you will see that if you do this, it will be enough. Or if you're not catching up, you're going to be very much rushed at the end of the process. So having those structure really helps you stay on track. I know it sounds obvious, but sometimes we don't do that because we feel like we are ready to do things without really planning. But I strongly recommend you plan so that you can spend this writing process in more ease. Also, one process that I never ever skip is do a lot of brainstorming. If you are a scholar that has all your research organized in your minds, good for you, but this is not my case. The reason why I like to do this brainstorming is because it really helps me clear my mind. Sometimes we have so many ideas in our mind, especially if you are a qualitative researcher like me, that we have so many interviews that we have to analyze, we have so many stories that we want to share, but sometimes we have a very limited amount of words that we can write in a paper. So it really helps you to narrow down your research questions, because I feel like when we start writing, we want to write about so many different things and it starts adding up and you literally lose track of all the things that you actually needed to write. So I really like to spend a good amount of time brainstorming. Another system that I adopt is batching writing. When I schedule my working hours, what I do is this hour is only for writing and this hour is only for organizing my thoughts. I don't do the two things at the same time because I feel like you end up feeling too distracted doing too many tasks at the same time. And if I ever feel like I will have to jump into a different kind of task, what I do is I create a comment on my Word document to write down, for example, oh, I need to search for a paper that can support this statement, or I have to look up for a research data that can support this idea. And whenever that time actually comes, that is for shallow work, that's when I will be searching for the reference list. That way I don't have to be switching between tasks all the time, which will definitely slow down my writing process. Another very useful hack that I've been using in my writing process is to use the speech to text feature. What I meant by this is I am not a fast typer, and when I'm writing, especially when I'm writing in English, I feel like I'm having to worry about the grammar and the spelling and the structure and all that. And when I'm thinking about all these things, the actual idea that I wanted to convey, sometimes it literally disappears. So that's why I like to use this speech to text feature so that I can just speak up whatever I have in my mind. And then I worry about the grammar and I worry about the spelling. Another thing that I like to do after each writing session finishes, I like to take notes, whatever I have done on that day and what I need to do the following writing session. That way, whenever I need to start working on the following day, I already know what am I supposed to be working on. In my case, I have downloaded a calendar on Etsy and I have been using it as a scheduler and also like a journal. So I write down all the tasks that I have worked on that day and what I need to still work on. One last hack that I want to share with you is to absolutely learn how to use the referencing tools. In my case, I use EndNote, and that has changed my writing process so much because now I don't have to be worrying about organizing my list at the end, because sometimes I feel like those tasks, they don't really take that much time, but it actually does, surprisingly. And if you learn to navigate through these technologies, it will facilitate your life a lot. So start sooner the better. Speaking of technology, you might be wondering if I use AI. And I'm not ashamed to admit that I do use AI. And in my case, I use it to do some brainstorming. Like I mentioned, I like to do a lot of brainstorming in the beginning of the writing session so that I can organize my thoughts. And I also like to use AI to correct my grammars and also suggest some keywords. In my case, again, I'm not a native English speaker, and there is this big issue when it comes to writing an English paper. Sometimes it's really difficult to find the exact nuances to translate from Portuguese to Japanese or to English because of the context. And if I only use Google Translate, it's really limited. This topic about AI is something that it's going to be around us forever. And I think that some of us still feel a little uncomfortable to talk about this issue, and I get that. And sometimes we'll still wonder, what is an ethical use of AI in writing a paper? And one of the standards that I have for myself is if a reviewer, for example, ever asked you to share your ChatGPT history, for example, would you feel comfortable sharing that with them? Because if it's ethical use, I don't think you will ever mind. Another way I like to think about the use of AI is, how would I feel if my students use AI like this for their paper writing? That really helps me analyze if I'm using this tool ethically. So that was it for today's video. I hope it was useful. I'm not really used to doing this like how-to kind of videos. And I always stand for the fact that your energy is your best productivity tool. So please take care of your mind and your soul so that you can always enjoy the writing process. Let me know in the comments if you have any productivity tools that you use or hacks. I will be very happy to see some suggestions. And I will see you in my next video. Bye!